New Element presents Not So Very Fairy Tale. Scary Larry.
Once upon a time, in a plain town, on a plain street, sat a plain house. And in that house lived a plain daddy, a plain mommy, a plain little girl named Eleanor, and a little boy named Larry. Now, Eleanor wasn't quite as plain as you'd think. She was, in fact, an adorable little girl with adorable cheeks and an adorable smile. But little Eleanor wasn't always so adorable. You see, Larry liked to scare his sister. It pleased his dark little heart to see his sister so frightened of his antics. Larry knew Eleanor was deathly afraid of the dark, so he used this most often to scare her senseless. Sometimes Larry would hide in her closet. Sometimes Larry would hide under her desk. Sometimes Larry would hide in her toy box. Each and every time producing the same results. Eleanor yelling for Daddy. Of course, Daddy would always reply in his plain daddy voice, "Oh, little Eleanor, Larry's just having fun like all little boys should." But Larry wasn't your average little boy. He wasn't plain at all. Not in the least. Dark circles under his eyes, teeth yellow from too much candy and not enough brushing, black sweaty hair that lay flat across his thick brow, fingers like little sausages with dirt under his nails. A pudgy, round circle of a boy that always seemed to be stuffing his mouth with sticky sweets and scaring little girls. And his favorite little girl to scare was little Eleanor. So this was the life of little not-so-plain Eleanor that lived in a plain house on a plain street in a plain town. Now little Eleanor did have one thing that made her happy that helped her through the frights her brother gave her. A plain little nightlight that her plain mommy gave her. It gave off a soft light that seemed to warm the room even though it was quite small. Larry had never seemed to take notice of it. Perhaps he was too focused on scaring her pants off to pay it any attention. But as soon as Larry's antics were done for the night, little Eleanor would bask in the warm, embracing glow of her plain little nightlight. It kept her safe from Larry, safe from shadows, and most of all, the unknown noises that would come from under her bed at night. Sure, she was scared of Larry, but little Eleanor was even more scared of the things she couldn't see keeping up a ruckus below her bed. Late one night, little Eleanor sat in bed in the soft glow of the nightlight, awaiting her scary siblings' late-night scare. He was late. Perhaps he wasn't going to scare her tonight. Perhaps tonight her dreams would be filled with ponies and cotton candy, and she'd be a lovely princess in a great castle with a royal tiger and servants and a charming prince. But right as her hopes were high, the glowing light died. She sat there in the darkness and fought not to wet her sheets. Somewhere in the room she heard scary Larry's giggle. She opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Suddenly, in a sweep and a flash and a rumble, little Eleanor's bed was sucked into the shadow below her. She sat up to find herself surrounded by all sorts of hideous, heinous, diabolical creatures. There was this constant chattering of teeth that seemed to encompass the room. Little Eleanor thought it was her own teeth, so she clamped her hand over her mouth. Her eyes grew wide as the most dreadful, horrendous creature of the bunch opened his mouth to speak. Its rows and rows of teeth glistened as it spoke.
"Greetings, little one! You do not look scared. Do you fear us?"
Little Eleanor moved her hand and replied.
No, you don't scare me.
The creature scoffed.
"Well, I'm the boogeyman, king of all that is dark, dire, and terrible. Surely you are without your wits. I am the most frightening thing you have ever beheld."
Eleanor replied. Nope.
"The Prince of Pestilence, Shogun of Shadows, Monarch of Night. the minister of sinister, the irrevocable, inconceivable, undisputed keeper of all things dark. I am the despicable, incorrigible, abominable boogeyman, the baddest of the bad. Surely you are indubitably afraid of me.
Eleanor replied with confidence.
No, I'm not.
But I'm the boogeyman!
Nope.
The monster eyed her curiously and then smiled with all of its sharp teeth shining.
Then you will be my queen!
Eleanor replied. What?
You, without fear of my colleagues and I. Now is the time of celebration! Behold, the queen of the dark!
Little Eleanor was quite surprised by their behavior. She thought for sure she was to be eaten, but like the boogeyman said, she was to become queen. The boogeyman wasn't plain at all, quite a change from what she was accustomed to. Little Eleanor became excited. These creatures that had been making noises under her bed weren't so bad, and there was to be a dinner in her honor. French bread, a nice dinner salad, chocolate cake for dessert, and chocolate was definitely her favorite. And for the main course, Scary Larry. He had been sucked into the shadow as well, and it was his teeth that had been incessantly chattering. Scary Larry pleaded,
Oh, little Eleanor, please! Please tell him to spare me, please!
and as Scary Larry stood, something fell to the floor and shattered. The plain little nightlight. With that, Scary Larry knew his fate. The monsters chomped away at their feast. How could little Eleanor sit there and allow them to devour her brother? You see, even though on the outside, little Eleanor, well, Queen Eleanor, was an adorable little girl to behold, on the inside, Scary Larry's antics had turned her just as dark and vile and ugly as he was on the outside.